Cuarto, orábamos por la charla denominada The Anthropocene Epoch, a Scientific Decision and a Political Statement.
Well, I have more than enough work to do as chairman of the Commission on Strategy, but always more work comes my way, and this is another problem that must be addressed. This is the first conference I have given on this top subject, the Anthropocene, but it is reaching a point where I must speak much more about this issue, especially at the Second International Congress on Stratigraphy that will be held in July of 2015. You can see my title, A Scientific Decision or a Political Statement. In 2010, this idea of the Anthropocene Epoch appeared in news magazines and newspapers worldwide. It was in The Economist, the cover story. It was in National Geographic, and it was in many, many newspapers. And since that time, I've received many phone calls from journalists wanting my opinion, wanting to discuss it with me. But what I find is journalists have an objective. They want a story that will capture the interest of the public readers. They don't want all the science. They don't want all the details. If there's a novel idea, they want to promote that. So their agenda is different than what science should be. But I've had to deal with it through the years, and now it's time to address it more fully. And the presentation I'm giving today will evolve through time to a much more refined presentation. So this is, as we say, very sketchy, but I want to give you an idea of the concept of the Anthropocene, and really, is it an issue that the Commission on Stratigraphy should consider? First, the idea appeared in this paper. There were many co-authors, all members of the Stratigraphic Committee of the Geological Society of London. The idea is that humans are leaving a distinct record on the Earth's surface, in the Earth's sediment, and eventually in the Earth's rocks that characterize the human impact. That humans are altering the Earth system to such an extent, impacting the Earth system to such an extent that should be recognized by a new unit of the geologic timescale called the Anthropocene Epoch. In doing so, the world's attention turns to the Commission on Stratigraphy. The Commission needs to approve this new unit. Of course, our units are defined by GSSPs. Our units are material units, that is rocks. If we can't define it by a GSSP, can it really be on the International Chronostratigraphic Chart as a formal unit? And of course, that's what the geologic time scale is based on, or the general consensus for it. Now, 2 years after that article was published, this article was published as a comment to that. Is the Anthropocene an issue of stratigraphy or pop culture? Because the authors argue that there's no stratigraphic record on which to base this unit. The Commission on Stratigraphy has definite guide on how units are to be established and on what basis. And the Anthropocene does not fit with those guidelines. And, of course, it's a popular term that signify that humans are altering the Earth system. But what I'll point out at this time is that we've known that. We've known that for a long time. In the United States, in the late 19th century, John Muir was proposing national parks such as Yosemite and for the redwoods to protect them from human destruction. In the 1960s, Rachel Carlson published her book, The Silent Spring, about the effect of American agriculture and the use of pesticides on altering the Earth system. And out of that grew the environmental movement. And out of that, preservational movement and the Green Revolution. And also the understanding that the Earth system has had many changes in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and this has affected the Earth's climate, and that is happening today. Climate change, or anthropogenic climate change. So all of a sudden this term comes out. It was first proposed by an atmospheric chemist at a meeting who said, we're no longer in the Holocene, we're in a new era, the Anthropocene. So in a sense, you can see that the drive for this new unit does not come from the stratigraphic record. It comes from this opinion, and I think a well-founded opinion, that humans are greatly affecting the Earth system. Though I emphasize, the primary focus is on the human's environment and what we prefer within that environment, kind of our own selfish interests in a way. 2010, at a workshop I was leading for the Commission on Stratigraphy, I started receiving calls from journalists. We've heard that you're going to meet in Prague and receive a preliminary report from the Anthropocene Working Group about this. What do you think? What's the opinion? My response is, we haven't received a proposal. How can we consider it? We haven't discussed it. How can we consider it? That journalist then contacted every voting member of ICS and asked how they would vote. And I think half of the voting members responded. And at the workshop, I said to them, how could you respond? You've not evaluated a proposal. You've not listened to discussion. That's how we have to make our decisions. That's how we made our decision on the quaternary. But it's continued. So, recently, this book was published, and I was asked to contribute an article on it. And I thought it's time that the task group took on or considered all the questions of the issue. The task group is largely made of proponents of the Anthropocene, those who favor it. And everything in the newspapers you see comes from the members of that working group, and the comments are reasons why it should be approved. When they've talked to me, when the journalists have talked to me for a half hour, an hour, and I see the article, it's all about why the Anthropocene should be approved. In spite of the half-hour discussion I gave them, there's usually one sentence. Stan Finney, the most vocal critic, disagrees. Something like this. So this was my chance to direct the task group that they really needed to consider all the questions about this. The question should not be raised at the level of the subcommission or at the level of the commission. It was the responsibility of the task group to consider all alternatives and the full context and implications of this idea of a new epic, the Anthropocene. So these are the questions I directed to them. And I have more now, but I'll just go through some of these. And I might add, before I go through some of these, they all seem critical. But myself, in my own mind, I've gone back and forth. At times I think it's wonderful and very important if the Commission of Stratigraphy approves this and recognizes this unit. At other times I'm thinking, well, it's not really a stratigraphic unit like we're set up to establish. We weren't set up to make political statements. We were set up to make scientific decisions in a very restricted sense. But my main goal here is that when this proposal, if one comes forward, when this proposal is considered, that there will be full discussion and evaluation of all issues before a vote is taken. Full and thorough discussion. And when a vote is taken, I'll have one vote. If it is, it'll be 2 or 3 years from now. I won't be chair, I'll be past chair, but I'll still have one vote. And my feeling is always, as a responsibility as an executive order, what the majority vote, whether I voted that way or not, once the majority votes, then I support that decision fully. Because it's been arrived at following full discussion and evaluation of the proposal. So let's look at these questions. Is the Anthropocene a concept in search of a distinct stratigraphic signal? You see, all the other units were based on stratigraphy. The reason for creating them came out of the rock record. The Holocene, the most recent unit, is all this sediment has accumulated after the last retreat of the glaciers in the northern hemisphere. There's a real stratigraphic record on which the Holocene was based, as well as all the other units. Even the Precambrian, with units defined in numerical ages. Precambrian history comes from a rock record. Okay? And putting the numbers is just a way to try to communicate about the rock record. But it's a rock record that gives us the history of the Earth during that time. I actually directed in my writings of this that the task group had to put together the stratigraphic record of the Anthropocene. Show us what there is. A lot of the papers are about what will happen in the future that you read. Should the base of the Anthropocene be defined on a stratigraphic signal, or instead should its beginning be defined on a date in human history? The reason to define it on a GSSP, that is a stratigraphic signal in a stratigraphic section, there's only one reason. That reason is to make it a formal unit on the International Chronostratigraphic Chart. That's the only reason. But stratigraphic signals are often delayed. Their preservation in the rock record is often delayed relative to the time the event occurs. We think of magnetic reversals as instantaneous, but really it takes several thousand years for a magnetic reversal to be locked into a sedimentary record. If you look at the ocean floor anomalies in detail, those magnetic bands, the magnetic anomalies, are not precise bands with exact boundaries. They're very irregular on their margins. I prefer, because so much of the talk is the human impact, why isn't human history used? We're altering, what's the event that's defining the Anthropocene? That we're altering the atmosphere, increasing carbon dioxide concentrations very rapidly. When did that begin? It began in the Industrial Revolution. Look at coal production records for the year that coal production went up greatly. Pick that year. Or a signal that could be recognized, possibly worldwide, is the isotope ratios presented by the first atomic bomb. But why look at that in the stratigraphic record? In many places it won't be preserved, or to be too weak to be distinctive. Why not use the date the bomb exploded, the first bomb? Not only the year, but the month, the day, the hour. You could even have the millisecond for an exact number if you wanted. But of course, if you did that, you don't have a GSSP. The other thing along this line is when we look at the Anthropocene and events, using human observations, human measurements that today are continuous over the entire Earth's surface, human records. We'll refer to things in terms of the human calendar, the 1906, even geologic events, the 1906 San Francisco earthquake is what we'd say, not the Anthropocene San Francisco earthquake. We'll be using human history. We won't be looking at the rocks. We'll be looking at our records of events. However, they're recorded by humans, the geologic record. Why would you look at that? It's so incomplete. And often, as I say, there's such a long delay time for signals to be recorded within them. Maybe we want to call it the Pleistocene, after plastic. We find plastic now, embedded in sediment all over the world. But we should maybe pick the date of the invention of plastic. So really, when we use this interval, we're going to be using human time to correlate events, to talk about events. So it's a really geologic time. Fundamental question. That's part of it. Is the Anthropocene a unit of Earth history or human history, or is it more a projection in the future? That book in which my paper was published, it's titled The Stratigraphic Record of the Anthropocene. Most of the events, stratigraphic events, talked about are how they will occur in the future, how they will appear in the future, not today. Or there's talk of eutrophication of lakes because of the runoff of fertilizer with human agriculture. This can be seen in lake bed sediments. But you couldn't distinguish it from natural eutrophication if you just looked at the stratigraphic record. You could only tell it was human-induced because you have records, human records, of when the use of fertilizers began. What is the usefulness of the Anthropocene as a mere material unit to be represented on geologic maps? Well, it would basically be the entire surface of the map, correct? Everything on the surface, any bit of sediment or loose dust, is the Anthropocene. So our maps would just all be one color. Covering like where you have a deep basin filled in with alluvium, it's QAL. Okay? So I don't think it would be shown on maps. Yet how would the Anthropocene be shown on maps, spatially? Topographic maps. At least the ones we produce in the United States, they have these incredible legends that show every natural feature, from a spring to a river to topography. But also they show roads, they show cities, they show buildings, they show cemeteries, they show ancient roads, they show where the ground has been altered by mining activities, they show types of agriculture, and they're regularly revised and updated. They're a fantastic record. So you would find the record of the Anthropocene on such kinds of maps, soil maps, but you would not find it really on geologic maps. Has it changed to a human-dominated Earth system overwhelmed the natural Earth system? Or might geological processes, both internal and external, still overwhelm the human influence? Well, if we have another asteroid like we had hit the Earth at the end of the Cretaceous, there'd be no more talk of an Anthropocene. If we have the outpouring of basalt, like we've had for the large igneous provinces, such as with the Siberian and Deccan tracts, you'd have major mass extinctions. You'd have acidification of the oceans so that any stratigraphic record is dissolved or none is deposited during that time. Okay, you would have the atmospheric system change far greater than humans are changing it now. And the Earth's climate would change. And just a side point, if we look at Earth history, we're worried about global change, but the whole history of the Earth has been global change. We have large igneous provinces leading to mass extinctions, asteroid impacts, Paleo-Eocene thermal maximum, the snowball Earth, mountain buildings such as the Alpine Himalayan event, that have greatly altered the Earth. What is, after all, this conceptual basis of the International Chronostratigraphic Chart and Geologic Timescale? Is the Anthropocene an appropriate unit for it? After all, I say, events will be recorded in terms of human timescales and calendars. You would have the International Chronostratigraphic Chart, and just at the top of it, off the top line, you'd write Anthropocene. That's all that you would show there. There'd be no duration to it, given the scale of the chart and the immense amount of time represented. Or, the Commission should consider, should it change and consider this very unusual, this very novel idea? I am open to the Commission considering that and realizing that a decision on the Anthropocene would be a very different nature and character than it was mandated to do. But that's for the voting members of the Commission to discuss and decide. And finally, will the term Anthropocene have value, even if not ratified as a formal unit? Well, there are other terms we use that represent major events in Earth history that are not formal units, yet we talk about Earth history using them. The Grenvillian, from about 1.2 billion to 0.9 billion years ago. Huge mountain belt formed. Continents collided. Seas regressed and transgressed. Life exploded. No doubt the atmosphere and the oceans and their chemistry changed greatly. Should that have a formal, should that be a unit on the time scale? Or some other Alpine Himalayan, snowball Earth? The other point I would make, and this is why I say, is not the term Anthropocene anthropogenic. Other organisms have impacted the Earth system far greater than humans, yet they are not recognized as units in the ICS chart. And they're talking about the Great Ordovician biodiversification event, but another one, an incredible one, is the spread of land plants. Look at what we have here. Here is CO2 levels for the last few 100,000 years and the human impact. Note the increase, terms of about 200 parts per million. Here we have the explosive dispersal of land plants soon after their evolution. Land plants cover the continents and the mountains. They increase weathering rates, which draw down carbon dioxide tremendously. A lot of that organic matter is preserved, sequestered in the earth as coal. That takes huge amounts of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Oxygen ratios increase tremendously. So much so that we find giant dragonflies, giant millipedes, and centimeters. Orders of magnitude greater than those organisms are today. That's a profound change to the Earth system. Over 100 million years. I point out that our Earth system is resilient, eventually accommodated that. Do we name this interval? Give it a special name? This is an organism that greatly altered the Earth. Look at the change in this table shows concentrations. CO2 drops here, 4,000 parts per mil to almost 0 parts per mil. That's orders of magnitude greater change than we see here by humans. So we don't name this interval after the planets. We still call it Devonian, Carboniferous, Permian. So what is wrong with the term Holocene? So, Anthropocene Epoch, scientific decision or political statement. The question needs to be asked, perhaps. But I really enjoyed an article by a colleague. He just said, you know, we do have a human impact. There's this idea, there's a strong community. Even the conservation biologists say ICS needs to approve this. This has just been published. The community of conservation biologists, at least in North America, are saying this has to be approved. Okay, but Kim Cohen had a good idea. Charles Lyell, Principles of Geology, the present is the key to the past. That was a time geologists, I mean, it started sooner with Steno and Arduino, and Werner began seeing the Earth in terms of having a history. But what Charles Lyell did was really put together observations that documented Earth processes going on today, and the fact that they could explain what was seen in the rock record. And really, in terms of geologic time, from 1830 to today, we're in the present. The term Holocene means wholly recent. So, I leave you with that term there. Again, I'm back and forth on this, but you can see these are issues that are not discussed in the public media at all. And so my point is bringing them to the table, that they have to be considered, at least by the members of the Commission on Stratigraphy, in the course of making a decision. Thank you very much.
En toda sesión de preguntas tenemos espacio para 5 preguntas, pero increíblemente en inglés o si no en español, y hablamos muy despacio. Si no hay preguntas, están me preguntan que el auditorio cuántas personas quieren usar el antropoceno. Entonces ya para finalizar sexto refrigerio, ya culminando con la agenda de esta tarde, los invitamos a disfrutar de un refrigerio ofrecido por el Servicio Geológico Colombiano en la entrada del auditorio, no sin antes agradecer su participación en este espacio que fortalece la misión del Servicio Geológico Colombiano y permitirá avanzar en la creación de la Comisión de Estratigrafía Internacional. Muchas gracias. Un aplauso para